Okay, so we're here. Happy to introduce Rich Roll on the show, on the whatever it's called today. Um, just happy to have you, Rich.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to talk to you.
I don't even know what to say. Rich is he's an inspiration to thousands of people. His book Finding Ultra inspired me to start running more and to just take back my health. Um, Motivational speaker, ultra athlete, triathlete, um, Epic 5 challenge creator and doer. I mean, you can't put you in a box. That's basically what I'm saying.
Uh,
You,
well, I would say that I lived in a box for a long time, so I'm glad to be out of the box. So actually, it makes me happy that you say you can't put me in a box.
yeah. You're a whole human being, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you, man. It's like I said, it's always good to be able to have an opportunity to talk to like-minded people and to kind of propagate in whatever way we can this healthy message. It's saved my life, and obviously it's something that you're passionate about, your viewers are passionate about. So, that's the beauty of the internet, is that it allows us to create these communities that ultimately I think are really helping us change the world, for lack of a better phrase and at the risk of sounding trite.
I guess just give us a little bit of background about yourself, so everyone's on the same page.
Yes, sure. So, how far back you want to go?
I don't know. I guess from Lawyerville.
From Lauderdale. So, can you hear me all right? Or are you losing me?
Oh yeah, I think I got you back.
You got me. Okay. So, yeah, I'm almost 48. I turned 48 in October. But I was not always this sort of ultra endurance athlete, sort of vegan personality. It wasn't that many years ago that I was living a pretty different life. When I was 39 years old, I was a practicing attorney, corporate lawyer, and I was kind of chasing what you would call the American dream. I mean, my whole life was kind of premised on this idea that, you study hard and you get into the best school that you can get into, and then you try to get the best job you can get, and you work hard and climb the corporate ladder. And, at the end of this kind of, yellow brick road is the promise of happiness. And I kind of premised my entire life upon that. And at the time, by the time I was 39, I was really on the precipice of achieving all those things. In my 20s and in my 30s, I had a pretty nasty battle with alcoholism that had destroyed my earlier promise that I'd showed as a younger person. And I basically lost everything. I destroyed my reputation. I was alienated from my family and my friends, and professionally I was unemployable. And, when I was 31, I was able to get sober. I went to rehab, and in the wake of that experience, my life really became about building a really strong foundation of sobriety, and then repairing all the wreckage, all the havoc that I'd caused as a result of my drinking and drug addiction. And so I really set about that, with a fury. And so I worked really hard, and I was able to get all those things back. I was able to become a responsible member of society again. I was able to repair my relationships with my family and become a responsible, worker among workers who does what he says he's going to do and shows up on time and all that kind of good stuff. So by the time I was 39, I'd really achieved all of those goals of like rebuilding my life. But during that period of time, I really overlooked my health and my fitness. I was subsisting on a junk food diet, McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, Carl's Jr., In-N-Out Burger, nachos, pizza, cheeseburgers, all that kind of stuff. That's what I ate every single day, or it was takeout food in the law firm. And as a result of, kind of an overstressed lifestyle and terrible lifestyle habits and diet habits, by the time I was 39 years old, I was 50 pounds overweight. But more importantly, I was really lethargic, and my energy levels were poor. I was unenthusiastic about my life, and kind of depressed, because at the same time that I was having, these incremental kind of health issues creeping up on me, I was having this sort of existential crisis about my life, because everything that I thought was supposed to make me happy wasn't really making me happy. I had this hole in my spirit, and I didn't know how to fill it. It wasn't going to be filled by becoming partner in my law firm or being able to buy a car. And I was intellectually aware of that, but I didn't know how to get out of it. And so it was this perfect storm of this existential crisis kind of intersecting with this health crisis that really created a moment that made me realize that I needed to change the way I was living. And it all kind of transpired on the evening shortly before I turned 40, where I had a moment on just trying to walk up the staircase to go to sleep one night after being up late at work, and I had to pause halfway up a simple flight of stairs. I was winded, I was out of breath, I had tightness in my chest, sweat on my brow, I was buckled over, and it was scary. It was a really scary moment. I thought, am I having a heart attack? Like, what is going on? I'd always looked in the mirror and thought of myself as this champion swimmer. I'd been a swimmer in high school and a swimmer in college at Stanford at a relatively high level. And, denial is powerful that way. Like, I would look in the mirror and I would still see that 21-year-old, kid who was fit and, energetic. And I'd lost touch with the fact that I really wasn't that guy in any way, shape, or form anymore. And so that moment on the staircase really snapped everything into focus for me. And that was the beginning of me trying to take stock of my life, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and also physically. And that, of course, includes, changing my diet, and everything that I've done and accomplished and that I am today really begins and ends with that kind of staircase moment that I had.
Wow. I mean, it truly has become a staircase, because you basically hit rock bottom.
Yeah, I mean, it was my bottom. It certainly could have been a lot worse. And I think that we all, the important kind of takeaway for me is that I think we all have these moments in our life where, things happen and we have this little line in the sand moment or a crack in the door where we have an opportunity to kind of grab onto something and change. And the work really comes in trying to recognize those moments when they crop up and not let them pass. And, in my case, I was lucky because I had kind of an aha, come to Jesus moment the morning that I woke up when I was 31 and decided, what, I really need to get sober. Like, my alcoholism is completely out of control, and I need to go to rehab. Like, that was a big aha moment for me. So when I was on the staircase having this incident, I was able to recognize that the moment was powerful, and I understood that it was going to require me to really act immediately and swiftly and decisively, because I'm very aware that that morning that I decided to get sober, if I decided to blow it off and put it off till the next day, I may never have had another one of those moments. Like, I may still be drinking or, not with us anymore. So I think that really empowered me and gave me the kind of awareness to realize that I needed to act immediately.
To me, the craziest thing is that you went from an alcoholic, cheeseburger eating lawyer on the couch to, all of a sudden doing these incredible things. I mean, how did you make that such a drastic switch? I mean, you talk about the staircase moment, but I mean, that must have been, how did that feel like, and what drove you that? I know your wife was a big part of that, and is a big part of your, that change now. So I guess just elaborate on that a little bit, if you could.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing to understand is that it kind of sounds like it all happened immediately and overnight, but the reality is that it was a long process. I mean, it was a good 2 years from that staircase moment to me lining up at Ultraman. It wasn't like a couple months later. So it's nice to kind of tie it up in a nice bow and make a really neatly packaged narrative that makes it sound like it was some kind of overnight miracle, but it really wasn't that. I mean, I began my diet journey with playing around with a fruit and vegetable detox cleanse, which, you know, at my wife's behest, I actually asked my wife to help me with doing something like that, because my wife was really the person that I looked to the next day after the staircase incident. I probably should have gone to the bookstore and watched a bunch of documentaries. This was before Forks Over Knives came out. It was before, you know, the Ancient 2 diet book came out. And certainly there were resources available to me, but I didn't really avail myself of those at that time. I just turned to my wife, who's much healthier than me. I mean, if you were to open up our refrigerator at that time, there was a pretty clear demarcation line down the middle between the food that she was eating and the food that I was eating. But she's a very health conscious person. She wasn't entirely plant based at the time, but she's always looking to expand herself, you know, in many different ways. And so I said, you know, I want to try to do this cleanse. And for me, that was like saying, you know, your high heels and dress in the closet, I'm going to wear that to work today. I mean, that's how out of character it was for me to even entertain the idea of trying something like this, because, you know, I come from a very fact-based, logic-oriented kind of background and way of thinking. And to me, it's sort of like, well, what are the toxins that we have, and how is drinking vegetable juice going to eliminate them? Like, didn't make any sense to me, but I had a willingness, you know, I had a desperation, action in a you know, sort of act as if, and so that's what I did, and that was an interesting process, because for the first couple days I was buckled over on the couch and I couldn't move, and I was sweating and I felt horrible, and it felt exactly like what I felt like when, you know, I landed myself in rehab, like I was detoxing off hard drugs. But I also know how to weather a detox. I've done that many times, and I knew that if I just stuck with it, that things would change. And the short, you know, version is that by the seventh day, I felt incredible. You know, I had levels of vitality and mental clarity and skyrocketing energy that I hadn't experienced as long as I could remember. And I couldn't understand how just drinking vegetable juice and some, you know, beet broth and, you know, some teas with herbs in it for a couple days could have such a radical impact on how I felt. And that was the first time that I really put together this equation, you know, between food and health. You know, like Hippocrates says, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And it also made me realize just how unbelievably resilient the human body is, because if I could abuse myself with drugs and alcohol and horrible lifestyle habits and a stressful job and, you know, trying to, you know, juggle family life and all these sorts of things while eating junk food and not taking care of myself, if I could treat myself so poorly for so long and then in such a short period of time feel so amazing, what am I actually capable of? Like, if I start treating myself right, like, what's possible? And that was the first, like, little seed that I planted that ultimately kind of blossomed in the idea of, you know, pushing myself athletically through, you know, Ultraman and Epic 5. But it was a long journey. You know, when I started getting fit again, it was really just because I had so much energy that I needed to burn off this, you know, so I could sit still. I couldn't sit still. I had so, you know, it was literally vibrating. I had so much energy. And I skipped over the part about actually adopting the plant-based diet. I mean, after I did the juice cleanse, you know, obviously it's like I got to start eating food, and what am I going to eat that's going to allow me to continue to feel this good? And I kind of stumbled around in the dark with that for a while. I played around with a vegetarian diet, but quickly evolved into a very junk food vegetarian diet. I didn't feel any better. I didn't lose any weight. My energy levels plummeted again, and I was back on the couch. And my decision to try 100%, I wonder if that would make a difference. And I didn't think it would. My expectation levels were really low, but I just thought, I can't give up entirely until I at least try this so I can scratch it off the list. And what happened was, within 7 to 10 days of switching my diet to, you know, this protocol, I felt incredible. You know, I felt like I felt on that 7th day of the juice cleanse, and realized that I was onto something pretty profound. And that's when I began to educate myself, because I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was actually healthy and could be sustained.
You mentioned this protocol that you're on made you feel like you were that same level of mental clarity and vitality that you had during and after the juice cleanse.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, because there are a lot of people in the plant-based world. There's either the people that eat a high-fat plant-based diet or a high-carb plant-based diet. I just wanted your take on the two of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's all sorts of different philosophies and camps, certainly across the board in diet. You look at, taking a broader perspective, paleo, Mediterranean, Pritikin, 80-10-10, vegan, all these different kind of diets. And I think from a consumer perspective, it becomes really confusing. What's the ultimate human diet? Like, how can I eat to fuel myself and be optimally healthy? And it can induce vertigo in even the most conscientious consumer who's looking around. And I think you find that in the subcultures of the plant-based movement. You have contingencies that, the sort of Esselstyn Engine 2 contingent that, is against eating any oils and doesn't want you eating too many nuts or avocados. In other words, a very low-fat plant-based diet. And then you have, people that are vegans for advocacy reasons who are really not in it for the health aspects. And, they have a very different dietary protocol from the people that are the 80-10-10, the fruitarians, who are eating a very high carb, low fat diet. So, I try to avoid all of these labels and camps, and I'm focused much more on the general public who's still stuck in this kind of revolving door of eating fast food and not able to escape the simple sort of prison of the standard American diet. And I think when we start debating and arguing over the final 1%, these small details, then we start to lose touch with the average person. And so personally, I would say that I wouldn't consider myself a member of any particular subcategory of plant-based, other than that I eat a whole food plant-based diet. I do eat some oils in my diet. I find that as an athlete, that seems to work well for me. But I think that if you're someone who's on the precipice of a heart attack or you've had heart surgery, that I think a very low-fat plant-based diet is the best protocol. And I know fruitarians who are incredible athletes, and that works really well for them. I eat a lot of raw foods, but I wouldn't consider myself a raw foodist. I eat, cooked meals for dinner and sometimes for lunch, but I still eat a ton of raw food. So, I'm not here to pontificate on one over the other or to say this one's best over that. I think the main focus should be on trying to eat whole plant-based foods close to their natural state. And then I think it's incumbent upon everybody to take responsibility for their own protocol, find what works for them, and figure out what's best for you, and try to not get caught up in this revolving door of arguments, that because I think it tends to not lead anywhere productive in the long run. And I think when you start to talk about it in public circles, kind of outside the vegan community, it's really important to develop a strategy that is welcoming and comfortable for somebody who's new to these ideas, to make them feel like this is not only possible for them, but that it's accessible and attractive.
If you advocate for this diet or this lifestyle, really, I mean, it's because the diet is something that you can sort of yo-yo on, but a lifestyle is something that is sustainable enough that you can carry throughout your whole life, no matter what your age. But yeah, I think a plant-based diet or lifestyle is all-inclusive, and it's easy to convey to people who are just, they've done the Jenny Craig and they've done the Weight Watchers and they've done paleo and all these things, and they wonder why they're sort of yo-yoing from diet to diet. And so I guess my other question would be, does the way you eat change whether you're having a whole day doing this kind of thing or whole day doing your podcast, versus a day where you're doing the Ultraman or you're biking all day, or does it vary from activity or?
I would say it varies. It varies in certain details or respects, but not tremendously. I mean, I think there's a difference between nutrition for performance and nutrition for sort of optimal, healthy lifestyle. So when I'm training really hard, the only big difference between what I eat versus what I'm eating when I'm more sedentary is really the amount of calories. I mean, the amount of calories increase. I tend to do a lot more blended drinks in the Vitamix when I'm training because it's a good way to pack a lot of calories into a small space. I mean,
Right.
You can blend a ton of stuff and compact it down and make it easily digestible and assimilated by blending it in a Vitamix. So I probably do more of that when I'm training, and I simply eat more. And I probably eat more fats and carbohydrates when I'm training hard. When I'm sedentary or, I'm working, I'm doing my podcast or what have you, I tend to eat way less. My appetite's lower, so it's not really like a calculated thing. I'm not as hungry, and I tend to kind of just graze throughout the day. Like I always like to have lots of healthy snacks around me, a lot of fruit, some raisins, some almonds, I'm just kind of, every 25 minutes, half an hour, I eat a little bit. So sometimes I'll go the whole day without really sitting down and eating a proper meal, but I've been kind of, eating throughout the day. So I feel good. I'm not hungry. I keep my energy levels high, and that seems to work for me. But I always have a family dinner at night. So that's when I would sit down and have a bigger meal. And that seemed to work out pretty well.
So, I mean, is your family all on board with the way you eat? Do they eat the same way?
Yeah. I have four kids, and it's been a evolution. It's been a family journey, I would say. As I said earlier, my wife was not initially entirely plant-based, but now she is. And my two teenage sons are now super into it, and they challenge me because they're always finding new nutritious foods, and they're always pushing me to kind of refine my program and do it better and hold me accountable, which is great. And I've got two daughters that are 10 and 7. My 10-year-old has become really passionate about animal advocacy, particularly wolf preservation. That's
cool.
What she's super into, which is cool. And as a result of that perspective, she's become really into it. And my 7-year-old, I mean, that's just what we eat at home. She doesn't really know any difference.
Right.
And so, but it's also, our parenting strategy has been pretty loose about it. Like, we don't create hard and fast rules for the kids at all. Like, when they're out with their friends, they're sentient, beings, and they're responsible for their own choices. So we try to educate them at home. We involve them in the shopping for the food and the cooking and the preparation of the recipes and all of that. So they have an emotional attachment to, where their food comes from.
Right.
But if they're at a birthday party and my 7-year-old wants to have cake, I'm not going to be the dad who says you can't have that.
Right.
She'll make the choice she's going to make, and then it's an opportunity to talk about it.
Right, to learn from it.
Yeah, and so what I'm just trying to instill in her is enough education so that she can make the best choice for herself. But it's not incumbent upon me to say you can't do this, and I don't shame them, and we try to be open and have a productive communication dialogue about it. Right,
and treat them as the intelligent people that they are. That
exactly.
They just have them understand that if you eat this, this will give a certain effect, and if you eat this, this will give a different effect. How do you stay full while doing these things? And also, a sub question to that is, what kind of snacks or food do you bring with you on long bike rides or long running rides?
So we're talking about training, right? Not racing?
Well, both, I guess.
Yeah, all right. Well, so for training, for day in and day out training, for the longer sessions that I'm doing, I try to take in about 200 calories an hour, especially on the bike, because I'm able to digest food much better when I'm cycling than when I'm running. And that can take many forms. Like, I try to always keep it on the whole food level. So a lot of bananas, a lot of dates, but I also like to eat almond butter. And a combination of those things always seems to work pretty well. And for liquid nutrition, I usually use a maltodextrin substance, which is a relatively low glycemic carbohydrate source of fuel. It's just a powder you can put in a water bottle, and it's very dense and concentrated, so I can get 900 calories in one water bottle. It's sort of like pancake batter. It doesn't taste great, but it's good for training. And so I use that. I stay away from the Gatorades and the Powerades and the gels and all of that. Anything with a lot of artificial coloring and flavoring with a high glycemic, high sugar, artificial sugar content into it. I try to avoid that kind of stuff. And it's also important to take in electrolytes, especially in the summertime. So for that, coconut water is great. And I also take an electrolyte capsule supplement with me rather than, the sugary Gatorades again. So that would be typical of, what I would take with me on a long training session. What else can I tell you? I mean, we sometimes when I have time, we make our own energy bars that are kind of date and nut based. But sometimes I'll buy bars, just to have in case I bonk out or whatever, and they're not, I try to avoid like the power bars and the super, artificial versions, but there's some good ones out there. I like, Pro Bar makes a pretty good one, and I tend to eat quite a few of those. In a racing context, it's different. It's sort of like what I was saying, there's a difference between performance nutrition and sort of day in, day out lifestyle nutrition. In a race context where you're pushing your body to its absolute limit, and you need a lot of sugar because you're burning, energy in your anaerobic system, then, the gels and the sugary drinks have their place. They're not something that I eat day in, day out, or even during training that much. But, a gel is actually quite effective when, you're in the last 90 minutes of a 170-mile bike ride and you need a lot of sugar to lift you up. It's appropriate for that. It's just not something I would eat every day. It's not the healthiest thing in the world. But, when I'm doing Ultraman, that's probably not the healthiest thing in the world either. I'm pushing my body, beyond where it's really kind of meant to go.
In terms of the sugars and how you would only have them on these very limited cases when you're doing these intense races or events, and not while you're training or when you're home just doing things around the house or things like that. Is there, because I know there are people that say sugar isn't bad, because we're taught that sugar is the devil and sugar will make you fat and all these things. So I guess is it a reason like that, or is it more like you feel better when you're eating these nut butters and things when you're sort of not in that super high intensity mode?
Yeah, it's not so much the sugar content in the gels, it's all the artificial preservatives and flavorings and colorings that I'm not a big fan of. I think that sugar, particularly in fruit form, is fantastic, and I eat tons of that stuff. But in a gel, you can get an even more concentrated source of sugar. And again, that has its place in a certain, context, i.e. racing. So, I'm not somebody who, I'm not a low carb vegan. I eat tons of carbs, and I think that carbs are essential for healthy living and for athletic performance. I don't know how I could train without carbs, and I know there's low carb athletes out there. That's a whole different discussion.
I was going to say, yeah.
But, I think that when you watch a movie like Fed Up, the recent documentary that really focuses on, the evils and ills of our addiction to sugar in our culture, that there's a lot to be said for that. And there's a lot of validity to that. When people are drinking, 12 Cokes a day and are truly addicted to high fructose corn syrup, then that's a problem. But I think we need to distinguish between, artificial sugars and high fructose corn syrup from, natural sugars that are found in fruit.
What would you say to someone who is just discouraged with fitness? They feel like, they're just starting, or they feel like they've sort of hit a wall, and they see people like you, and they see people doing these amazing things with their bodies. and they seem like it's an inspiration to them, but they can't seem to get over these mental limits in their mind. So what would you say to that person that sort of just feels like, they want to be fit, but they can't, they
can't get there.
Yeah, they can't get there.
I mean, I think that the first thing is to find some kind of physical activity that you enjoy. I love being outdoors. I love trail running. I love being on my bike. I love being in a swimming pool or in the ocean. So these are activities that I naturally gravitate towards, irrespective of, fitness or competition. I just enjoy them. And so because of that, I'm more likely to do them or more likely to look forward to a workout. So I think it's, the first thing is to find something that you really like doing. If you don't like running or you don't like going to the gym, figure out something else that makes you happy. Because again, it's the difference between diet and lifestyle in the fitness context. Right. You're trying to create a new sustainable lifestyle for yourself. And it's important to remove or shift your thinking away from destinations and focus on just embracing the journey. So if your goal is to lose 15 pounds or you want to run your first 5K, those are important goals that lend structure to your day and help propel you forward, but they're not the answer to all of your problems. It's really about appreciating every day what you're doing. And I think that the other big thing is a lot of people talk themselves out of even starting, through defeatist thought patterns and self-esteem issues. They just don't feel worthy enough to even show up and begin. And my encouragement to everybody is to just start doing. You don't have to know where it's leading. You don't even have to have a goal. You don't have to have the right equipment. You don't have to know what you're doing, but you got to get out and begin, and try to create some momentum around whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's out walking or riding a horse or riding a bike or what have you, anything that's active. So creating momentum is really important. And then the next big thing is creating community around what you're doing, trying to surround yourself with like-minded, positive-minded people who are supportive of the direction that you want to go in your life and are going to hold you accountable. And if you say, hey, I want to run a 5K or whatever it is, they're going to say, hey, did you do your workout today? Like, you told me you want to run a 5K. Like, you better get on it. Like, to have people that, and I guess in both a positive and in a negative context, are really holding your hand to the flame and making sure that you show up and follow through. I think those are really big and really important.
Ryan, you mentioned, embracing those moments and embracing the journey and not being so focused on, okay, I'll be happy once I lose that weight and then everything will be fine. It kind of reminds me of that the tweet you did about life hacking and how you're against life hacking, and I think it's a good segue to talk about that. So I guess just if you could explain that a little bit and your thoughts on the idea of life hacking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against life hacking. I think the idea of life hacking in and of itself, which is essentially trying to create efficiencies in your life, I think, that is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that we've become obsessed with hacking our lives, in this sort of quantifiable self-movement, that we've lost sight of what's really important. And so it was like last December, I threw a tweet out that went something like, maybe stop trying so hard to hack your life and invest in the journey. And I ended up writing a blog post about that I put up on Medium, and I think it was on the Huffington Post as well. Yeah. And essentially it was kind of a plea to look at this from a different perspective. Again, like, there's nothing wrong with trying to find something to create an efficiency in your life. We have to understand that these things are just tools. They're inert objects, and I think we've given them too much importance in meaning when we create entire conferences around, life hacking this or life hacking that, and we've lost sight of the value of just the journey, and appreciation for the fact that good things are hard. If you want to succeed in some certain area of your life, or you want to change, or you have a goal you're trying to achieve, it's hard. It's hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And so the ethos of the hack is that everybody can, achieve these goals without lifting a finger. And, it's a life of ease and leisure. And my message is that the real value is in the journey of trying to accomplish something that's difficult and what you learn about yourself along the way. You're going to fail, and failure is part of the process. And it's about learning to embrace that failure and not to judge yourself, and to pick yourself up when the chips are down and move forward. And I think that if you ask anybody who's achieved any level of success or achieved a big goal in their life, or if you ask any entrepreneur that's built a successful company and say, when you think back, what is most valuable to you about, this journey that you've been on? And they're going to tell you almost every time, it was that time when, the company, we were just back in the garage, and we we only had $50 in the bank account, and we didn't think we were going to make it. Yeah. Or, that morning that the alarm clock went off and it was snowing outside, and I didn't want to go outside and run, and I did it anyway. And when you look back, those are the moments that mean the most. Those are the important memories. It's not the destination. It's not when your company goes public, or you cross the finish line at that Ironman or that marathon. Those are all great and important, but the real value lies in, the struggle that inevitably comes from seeking to be better.
Yeah, and that, you put it beautifully. Thank you. It kind of reminds me of, if all of a sudden you could take a pill and you were quote unquote enlightened, or you could, all of a sudden you win the lottery. Most of the times, you wouldn't know what to do with that newfound wisdom, or you wouldn't know what to do with all this new wealth, because you didn't have the things to compare it to, and also you didn't have the sort of muscle building of, trying to attain those specific goals, whether it's enlightenment or whether that's fitness or whether that's money. So,
of course.
So yeah, but that's interesting. Route that sort of life hacks have sort of taken. But that also points to another question. How did you start making money as an athlete? I mean, I know you sort of went away from being an entertainment lawyer for other corporations and things.
Mm-hmm.
So how'd you make that change? I mean, did you sort of just all of a sudden just really invest in yourself and building up this, I guess, brand you could call it, with your podcast?
Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey. It's been a very hard fought journey to try to figure out how to create a sustainable living out of promoting sustainable lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And I've been a lawyer my whole life, and not my whole life, but since 1994.
Right.
And when my book Finding Ultra came out in the spring of 2012, I made a decision. It was a family decision that I was going to stop practicing law once and for all. And I'd been trying to get out of practicing law for a long time, and I've been slowly extricating myself from it. But it was finally like I'm cutting the safety leash, and I'm going to do this completely. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to find a way to do it. I'd gotten paid in advance for my book, so I had a little bit of money, but it certainly wasn't enough money to support my family of 6 people,
right, of course,
keep a roof over their head. So it's been a journey of trying to figure out how to make it all work. And, I've made a lot of mistakes, and we're still figuring out how to do this. But, the answer is that I've diversified myself where I have income streams from lots of different places. So I'm not overly dependent on any one thing.
Right.
Initially I started the podcast a little over 2 years ago. It was never my idea to make money off of it, but now the audience has become so large that I'm in a place where I can monetize it a little bit. And so it makes a little bit of money. It doesn't make a ton of money.
Yeah.
But people contribute by using the Amazon banner ad, and it also raises awareness for what I'm doing. And I have an array of products that I offer on my website. We got a bunch of garments with a lot more stuff coming. We have some nutritional products up there. So that generates money, and my book continues to sell. I've done a couple online courses with Mind, Body, Green, and I make money off of that. I've got 2 more book projects in the works, so hopefully those will, pan out financially. And we have some interesting new business ventures coming up where we've invested in a local plant-based cafe that's opening here next month.
Oh, cool.
As well as a vegan, gluten-free baker who is an amazing talent, and we're getting behind her and what she's doing.
Yeah.
So we're exploring all different kinds of ways to sort of make money. And the trick really is that, I don't want to be one of those guys on the internet with, who has a website with a lot of arrows pointing to like buy here now.
Right,
exactly. I'm just not that guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I got kids and I got to figure out how to support them. And the things that I'm doing need to be, self-sustaining. And I think it's fair to, get paid for the content that I'm putting out there. So essentially, everything that I'm doing really kind of comes back to creating content, whether I'm blogging, I'm podcasting, I'm writing a book, I'm writing a cookbook. I do public speaking. I've been traveling a lot, and I've done a lot of international travel, and that brings money in too. So it's not any one thing, but everything that I do centers around promoting, a positive message, a plant-based lifestyle message, and a message of transformation for people that are out there stuck in their lives and are looking to kind of, explore and discover and educate themselves to transcend their circumstances.
What would be your advice to someone who, wants to get out of the rat race, as it's called, wants to, stop practicing law or stop, working, the job that they really don't like, and, really pursue whatever their passion is? What would your main advice be? I know you said you didn't say to do this, but to have multiple streams of income instead of relying on just one paycheck, which is funny because they call that job security, but it's not really much security, I don't think.
Right. Well, I think the first thing that I would say for people to do that are feeling stuck and want to, change their circumstances professionally is start meditating. That's the most important thing, because I think there's a lot of people out there, they don't like their jobs, they got a crappy job, they want to change, and they may think they know what they want to do with their life, but my experience is that most people really don't. Right. They're not really in touch with themselves enough to really understand what their passion is. And I think in order to begin to answer that question appropriately for yourself, you've got to develop a greater relationship with yourself. And that begins with a very consistent daily meditation practice. It comes with doing daily journaling, and it comes with starting to express in your life things that mean something to you. If you do have some kind of passion, I'm not saying up and quit your job overnight. We have real world responsibilities. I've been trying to get out of law for many, many, many years, since before, I became vegan and all these sorts of things. It took me a long time. And it's been the only reason that it's working now is that I had the willingness to do the inside work to try to figure out, what my place in the world is and what I really wanted to express. And that did not come easy. And so there's a lot of, internal work and struggle that I think you have to undertake in order to figure out the proper direction that you want to go in. Because if you're confused, then your intuition and your instincts could very well send you down the wrong path, and you don't want to invest a lot of time and energy in the wrong path. You want to make the right decision to head down the right path. So the inside work comes first, and then after that, it's about just beginning to start to try to express, whatever that passion is in your life, in your free time. And you don't have to know how it's all going to work out. I could have never predicted, even a couple of years ago, that I would be doing some of the things that I'm doing now. They didn't result out of some kind of long-term plan that I wrote out and said, these are the things I'm going to do. They resulted because I was passionate about the message, and I was finding new ways to express myself, and I was paying attention to the universe, and I was just open to opportunities that would come my way. And these things, one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you're doing things that a couple of years ago you had no idea that you would be doing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's amazing because you talk to anybody who's sort of, been through that sort of hurdle and is now, doing what they're passionate for. That they've basically found their vocation, which I think you have.
Mm-hmm.
They all have a similar take that you make the change in your mind and you say, okay, because your thoughts are creative, so you change the thought pattern in your mind and you say, okay, these things that I'm doing right now, this really doesn't reflect who I want to be. So you just change that thought pattern, you put your thoughts to actions, and then you just have faith that those actions will breed what you want, because it's like you said about before, gaining that momentum. Object in motion will stay in motion.
Yeah, I mean, Einstein said it best when he said that you can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it.
Right.
You have to shift your consciousness, and your thoughts are very powerful. Like everything in the world is a result, that man has created began with a thought. And, you're crazy if you don't think that these thoughts are super powerful. If you're getting lousy results in your life, those things begin with the ideas that are swimming around in your head. You've got to shift that consciousness. And, it's universal law. If you, when purpose, I said this in my book, when purpose aligns with fate, the universe will conspire to support you. And that's been true every single time in my life. But, your purpose and your faith have to be true. And in order to make sure that they're true, that's where the inside work comes in. And if you do that and you start to put action behind these ideas, you would be surprised what comes out of the woodwork. It's never what you expect it to be or what you think it's going to be, but you will find support. If your intentions are pure, if your actions are true, and this truly is the path for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have a lot better way with words than I do. It's amazing once you do realize the power of your true self, not your sort of ego self. I mean, the big self inside you, you move mountains or you run Ultraman races like you have, and be a father and 4 kids in today's world where, it's a very difficult thing to do and do it right. Because anybody can, pop out kids and, say that they're a dad. But really it takes a really special kind of person to be a father. And that's one job. But, you're somebody who's, in my eyes, a very exceptional human being that, is a big inspiration to me. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. But also, it's important to understand that, I don't have all the answers, and I'm out there trying to figure everything out just like everybody else is. And so I don't want to be up on some kind of pedestal as like the ultimate dad and all that kind of stuff. I do the best that I can. And I've made a lot of mistakes and I try to learn from them, but we're all in the same boat.
Yeah. Again, perfect words. You should be a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
What is your favorite thing about running, about cycling, and about swimming? Which one of those 3 is your favorite and why? And also your number 1 tip for those 3 sports.
Mm-hmm. Well, my first love is swimming, and so will always have a special place in my heart. Swimming is really important to me, and it was what I found when I was a youngster, and I was kind of an insecure kid, the kind of kid who was picked last for kickball and awkward and kind of a loner. And swimming really saved my life when I was a young kid. So swimming will always be my favorite. But today, swimming gets boring too. And so what I like about triathlon is just the constant variety. If I was to go out and ride my bike every single day, I'd get bored of that. Or if I had to go running every day. So I like mixing it up. I like that there's constant variation. So it's really, having all three of those together is what makes it special for me. And what I love about all three of them and what they share in common is that they're very, they're kind of solo endeavors. And especially when you start going real long, they become active meditations. They're opportunities to connect with yourself and learn something about yourself. And that's what I love about endurance sports. And that's what I love about the kind of solitary nature of swimming, biking, and running. But I like the communities around them too.
Yeah.
I love the triathlon community. I love the ultra running community. All of that is a beautiful thing. And there's really cool people that I've met as a result of my experience participating, in these worlds. In terms of tips for people that are, swimmers or trying to learn how to swim for triathlon, my number one tip is to focus on technique. I see triathletes all the time at the pool, and they're so worried about conditioning and getting their workout in that they never take the time to try to figure out how to properly dial in their stroke. And I can see them becoming so much better if they would just stop and take a couple months and just work on nothing but stroke technique.
Right.
So that's always my number one tip with swimming is focus on technique over conditioning. In terms of running, my number one tip is don't overdo it. Even avid runners who are relatively fit, they want to go out, they run every day, and everybody gets injured. And I'm not immune from injury. I've been injured from running. But when I was running my best and training my hardest, I never ran 2 days in a row. I never ran on consecutive days. I would do one double run day. On Tuesdays was usually my double run day. But then there was always a day in between my runs. And I think if you go out and you run every single day, or you kind of run the same distance, do the same workout, you're probably going to get injured. And it's important to take into account recovery when it comes to running. And my number one tip with cycling is be safe. Cycling's super fun. I love it. But it's really dangerous. So for me, it's all about safety, making sure you have the right helmet and the helmet fits, putting a mirror on your helmet or on your handlebars so you can see what's coming behind you, just being aware of your environment, and picking routes that you ride on that are on the safer side, with broader shoulders or less traffic.
Great. Where do you go for your health, your nutrition information?
For my information, I go to a variety of places. I think my favorite online resource for nutritional information is Dr. Michael Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org.
Great,
it's a fantastic resource, particularly because it's very research and fact-based. It's basically a catalog of videos on every imaginable subject relating to diet and nutrition. If you type in the search window anything you want to know about, like coconut oil or diabetes or what have you, I can almost guarantee you that he has a video that will address that subject matter. And his analysis is always rooted in the latest research papers. So that's a fantastic resource. The Forks Over Knives website is great. PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, is a great resource. What else? For the athletes out there that are plant-based, nomeatathlete.com, Matt Frazier does a great job online. The books by Brendan Frazier, the Thrive series of books, is fantastic. If you're just starting on your plant-based journey, I think that The Engine 2 Diet and My Beef with Me are great books. My buddy John Joseph, who's the lead singer of the punk band the Cro-Mags, just came out with a book called Meat is for Pussies, and that's a pretty fun read. It's basically oriented for dudes,
Yeah.
And it's written in his very specific vernacular.
Right.
And I wrote the forward to that book, so that would be a good one to check out. And there's lots of documentaries out there. If you haven't seen it, watch Forks Over Knives, watch Food Inc., watch Cowspiracy, which is a new documentary that's coming out right now that I have some involvement with, that really addresses the environmental impacts of animal agriculture. And
yeah,
the whys and hows of, why eating plant-based is really the most and only sustainable diet to feed, our massive and exploding population.
I really want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I know, you're a man out of the box, so you have a lot of things on your plate. So it means a lot to me for you to do this. So I really want to thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me. This was fun.